So 9.2, we're going to learn how to write quadratics in vertex form. So you know how some of them are written in standard form, like down here, example 2, it's written in standard form. We are going to figure out how to then change it so that they're in vertex form. Okay? In order to change it to vertex form, you need to know how to complete the square. Okay? Do you guys remember learning how to complete the square a while back? Okay. So if we wanted to change these to perfect squares, remember what we do is we take half of b, so we take 18 divided by 2, which is 9, okay, and then you square it to get the c term, like, or whatever, okay? But these as perfect squares, how could I write this as a perfect square? Do you know how that one factors?
Oh, x minus 4 squared.
Yeah. Because, so remember, this number is the one that you are adding, and this is the one you are multiplying. So 4 times 4 is 16, but in order to make it -8, you'd need a -4 and a -4. -4 times -4 makes a positive 16, right?
Yeah.
So instead of writing it as x minus 4 and x minus 4, we would write it as x minus 4 squared. This is a perfect square trinomial, okay? Yes, that's basically what we're doing as the diamond method, exactly. Okay, but when you're completing the square, we always take half of b and square it, okay? So for instance, let's do to example 1. They want us to find the c value, and also they want us to write the square. So we would take 16. 16 divided by 2 is what? 8. And then 8 squared is what?
64.
Okay, so that means that my perfect square is going to be x what?
Plus 8.
X plus 8 squared. And my c value is what?
64.
64. Okay, you try b on your own. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Okay, so you should have taken -2 divided by 2, which makes what? -1, and then we square -1, which makes 1. So my square is what? X minus 1 squared, and my c value is positive 1. Good. Now on c, and this isn't going to happen too many times, but just knowing if you have a number that doesn't reduce, you would just leave -15 over 2. Since it doesn't reduce, just leave it as -15 over 2. Okay? Then you would take that number and you would square it. So what's -15 squared? Good, 225, and then 2 squared is 4. So when you're writing your perfect square, we're going to have x what? X minus 15 over 2 squared, and then my c value is 225 over 4. Okay? So if your fraction doesn't reduce, just leave it as a fraction, and then you just square the top and the bottom number to get your c value. Okay, so basically we're using all this information to then do the actual quadratic functions in vertex form. Okay. Now, remember back when we were completing the square, how we would complete the square on one side, and whatever we did to one side, we had to do to the other side? Remember how we made the blanks on both sides of the equations? Do you guys recall that? Okay, well, in this case, I don't want to add things to both sides of the equations because I want the y by itself. So if I put a number over here, the y wouldn't be by itself. Okay, are you understanding what I'm saying? So instead of adding something to both sides of the equation, if I add a 3 and I subtract a 3 at the same time, do you see how those basically is saying like I did nothing, right? If you add 3 and subtract 3, they cancel each other out. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing with parabolas. And we'll go ahead and start this problem so you can see what's happening. So we have y equals, when I complete the square, I want my x squared and I want my plain x term. So I'm going to make a parenthesis and I'm going to write x squared minus 4x plus blank, because we want a c value that's going to end up making it complete the square. Okay? And then I'm going to close my parenthesis. I still have a -1, right? So after this, I'm going to write -1. And then since I added a blank, I'm also going to want to subtract a blank. Because basically, if I add and subtract the same number, it's like I never did anything to begin with. Make sense? Okay. So would we agree if, let's just pretend, I don't have a pencil here. If I wanted a pencil. Can I borrow your pencil real quick? This is all pretending. If I add 3 and subtract 3, right? It's like I never, yes. I never did anything because 3 minus 3 makes 0. So that's why whatever I do here, I have to do the same thing because otherwise it's going to change the whole problem. If I added 3 and didn't subtract 3, it's just like you're adding 3 to something and you're not being fair. You have to be fair. Whatever you, yes, I'm making it worse. Okay. All right, let's just go through and complete the square. So what would I do to complete the square here? Good. So we're going to go -4 divided by 2 is what? -2, and then -2 squared is +4. So the 4 value is the c value. So I'm going to add 4, and I'm also going to subtract 4. So that's what goes in each of those blanks. Now we want to write this as a square. So when I do that, I'm going to write y equals, and how am I going to write x squared minus 4x plus 4 as a square?
X minus 2 squared.
X minus 2 squared. Remember that your square usually always, or it is always that -2. If you wanted to do the diamond method with that, you could, but you'd end up getting x minus 2 squared. And then you're just going to simplify what's at the end. So -1 and -4 make what? -5. So this is now my equation in vertex form. And then they also want you to identify the vertex. So what is the vertex now that it's in this form?
-2,
5. And that's your answer. Okay, so let's try another one. Are you ready? Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to rewrite it with our blanks. Okay? And I'm going to do one more example with you, and then I'm going to start pulling some popsicle sticks. So we have y equals, in parentheses, what will I write? Good. X squared plus 20x plus blank. What goes on the outside over here? Your +90, and what else? And a minus a blank, because if I add a blank, I also need to subtract it so it balances out. Okay? How will I find my c value that I want? Good. 20 divided by 2 is 10, and 10 squared is 100. So 100 goes in each of my blanks. Now I need to write my equation in vertex form. So we write it as y equals what? Very good. X plus 10 squared minus 10. Because a +90 and a -100 make -10. Okay, and then we need to state what the vertex is. And what is my vertex? Good. -10, -10 is correct. Do you guys have questions before I start pulling some popsicle sticks here?
Wait, why is it -2?
Yeah, why did 2 negative?
Very good. Who can tell us? Why is this -10?
Because it's the opposite.
Whatever, it's always the opposite of what's in parentheses, because you'd set that equal to 0 and you'd find that x equals -10. This one is not in parentheses, so it stays the same. Okay, other questions? Okay, moving on. That's weird. Oh no, it's here. Okay, phew. Sorry. I thought that the examples, I thought it was a blank page. Okay, example 4. So, first step is what? Tang. Okay, so tell me what to write.
Y equals x squared, or parentheses x squared, and then blank.
X squared plus,
6x.
good, plus
Blank.
the blank, and then what?
Minus 4. And minus the blank.
Perfect. Okay, so all we're doing is making our blank for our C term, and whatever we add, we also subtract. If you have a cell phone out, please put it away or flip it over. Okay, next step is to do what, Lillian? Good, take your B term, which is 6, divide it by 2, and that makes 3. And then what do we do now? We square it, which makes 9. And then what do we do with that 9? Exactly, perfect.
And what do we do with the g?
You can change it to y, or we could have left it as g of x. Either way is okay. Next step is to do what, Dilly? So we have this equation here, but it's not exactly written correctly. So we need something to be squared. So what do I end up doing? So we have our g of x or y equals, and it's going to be x what? X, very good, x plus 3 squared. And then we combine these terms at the end, and negative 4 and negative 9 combine and make what? Good, negative 13. And then our last step is to state the vertex. And Chris, can you tell me what the vertex is? That's it, negative 3, negative 13. And we're done. Okay, questions? All right, what's different about example 5? Do you remember what to do with that?
Yep.
What do I do? Who can tell me? Good. So what we're going to do, we're going to rewrite this. We're going to go y equals, but when you're completing the square, you do not want a number with your x squared. No, so we're going to factor it out. So that 5 is going to end up becoming my a term, okay? So 5's going in front, which means, bless you, we are dividing each of these two terms, because they're the only things that are going to be in the parentheses. We're dividing each of them by 5. So when I divide the x squared by 5s, they cancel out, and I just get x squared, which is exactly what I want. 10 divided by 5 makes 2. So I have plus 2x, and then I'm still going to make my plus blank, okay? And then after the blank, then I have my plus 7. Now this is what you have to be careful of. This really means, because we'd end up distributing it, right? This is really saying 5 times the blank. So what am I going to need over here? Minus 5 times the blank. So if you ever have a number in front, you need to have that in front of your blank over here as well. Okay? So now what do I do to complete the square, Gabby? Good. So 2 divided by 2 is what? 1, and then we do what? Which is 1. So that means that 1 is going in each of my blanks. Okay, next, who can tell me? Oh, she's not here. Erin, now what? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Good, but what should be in front of my parenthesis? Good, so we're going to have a 5, and then it's going to be x plus 1 squared. And then at the end, we're going to simplify this. Well, you would first need to multiply. Okay, so negative 5 times 1 is negative 5, so we end up having 7 minus 5, which is 2. So plus 2. And then what is my vertex? Negative 1, comma 2. Because really the number in front is just our a value. It has nothing to do with our vertex or anything. It's really, remember, that number is telling us if it's wide or narrow, right? Okay, so there is my answer. Okay, example 6. So let's do one more here. And then I'm going to have you try the last one kind of on your own. So example 6. What would be my first step, Cameron? Do you know? Very good. And so what's that going to be?
It'll be x squared plus 4x,
Well, I'm going to take out what number?
-2.
Good. Okay, so we're going to take a -2. What you might want to do when you're doing this is divide these by -2 so you actually see it. So on my first one, the -2 cancels, which is what we want because we want a positive x squared. And so we just have that, positive x squared. That's what we want. And then what happens with 8 divided by -2? Good. You get a -4x. And then we have our, what comes after that? Plus blank. Close our parenthesis. And then who can tell me what is going to go, actually I'm going to pull a popsicle stick. What goes at the end? Okay, Nathan, what's going to happen there at the end? We're going to have -4, okay, and then what? Good. +2 times our blank, right? Perfect. Because since it's a -2 times the blank, we have to do the opposite. So then we have +2 times the blank. Does that make sense? So it's always going to be the opposite so that they would cancel each other out. Okay, next step is to do what? Ariana. Perfect. -4 divided by 2 is -2, and then what? Good. And -2 squared is 4. Perfect. And so that is what goes into each of our blanks. Okay, next step, what am I going to do? Roel.
You would put it in the form
Okay.
x
G of x equals,
x minus 2 squared
what should go in front though?
-2.
Good. So we have -2 parenthesis, and then you said x minus 2 squared. And then at the end, what am I going to do here? Taylor.
You are going to multiply 4 times 2 and then subtract
Good, which makes what?
4.
4. Perfect. And then last is, what is my vertex? Alexandra, what's my vertex?
2, 4.
Perfect. 2 comma positive 4. And that's our answer. Okay, questions? All right, last example 7. I'm going to give you a minute to try to get this one in the correct form on your own. I'm going to walk around. If you have the answer, you can raise your hand and I will check it. Perfect. This one is not right. Your y value is not right. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. Oops, I can't make it all the way around. So the vertex should be -3, -20. That's the best way to kind of check right now. So first step is to do what, Cody?
First, you have to put down the equation.
Okay.
It should be y equals 2x squared plus 18x plus blank.
Okay, so we can't have the 3 in there, so we're going to factor out the 3, right? So we're actually going to write that as 3 parentheses, and we'll divide each of these by 3, and then what do we end up with inside here?
X squared plus x plus blank.
Plus 6x, right? Because 18 divided by 3 is So 6x and then plus blank. Good. And then what is going to be at the end, Blessy?
That's 7 minus 3 reduces 9.
We're just going to do blank. Yeah, you're fine. Okay, because if we have 3 times this blank, we're going to have minus 3 times the blank at the end. Okay, now what am I going to do? Allison.
Oh. You. You're gonna find the blank by using
You can just tell me which number it is.
the 6 divided by 2.
I'm sorry, it's probably because you guys already did it and it's hard. Okay, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. So 9 goes in each of our blanks. So now when we write this, we have y equals 3, parenthesis. This is going to end up being what? Anybody? Good. X plus 3 squared. Now this is where some of you messed up. So when you're simplifying here, okay, we have a positive 7, and then what's negative 3 times 9? Negative 27. Anytime we have a positive and a negative, we subtract, take the sign of the bigger number, so that's going to end up making a minus 20. Okay, so that means that my vertex is going to be negative 3, negative 20. And those are my answers. Questions?